forward of the eligibility timeline. Another update in terms of are getting the checks out to people. There are a significant number of Social Security recipients who do not file taxes. As we noted earlier, or a couple weeks ago, I should say, direct payments went out very quickly to those who file taxes every year, who do it via direct deposit. And thanks to collaboration between the IRS and the Social Security Administration, they will soon announce that we are on track to send those payments out this weekend. The majority of people should see them in their bank accounts on Wednesday, April 7th, which is obviously a very positive step forward. Finally, as many of you saw earlier this morning, the President announced his historic slate of judicial nominees of his administration, the first historic slate, I should say, with 11 candidates overall. This is an unprecedented fast start for any president in the U.S. history on judicial nominations. This is also a groundbreaking slate in many ways. It includes 4 nominees who have served as public defenders, 4 who are members of the AAPI community, a nominee who, if confirmed, would be the first Muslim American federal judge in history. 9 of the 11 nominees are women. And overall, this group represents a paradigm shift in the type of people who can see themselves on the federal bench, while still maintaining the president's absolute highest standards for the qualifications, integrity, and fairness of each individual being considered. So lots of news. Go ahead, kick us off.
Thank you, Jen. I want to start by asking on guns. It has been noted, actually, that 40 years ago today was the attempted assassination of President Reagan. But some gun safety groups have expressed disappointment at the president's sidestep of the issue in his news conference last week. Can you give an update on what is in the works in terms of a timetable for possible executive actions on guns?
Well, first, let me say the president understands their frustration. He is somebody who has fought for gun safety measures since he was in the Senate himself. He did that in his effort to fight for the Brady bill, in his effort to fight for a ban on assault weapons, and in his leadership putting in place almost 24 executive actions on gun safety when he was in the Obama-Biden administration. Right now, we're working on a couple of levers. One is working with Congress. There are 2 background check bills that have moved their way through the House. Many of you may have seen this weekend, Senator Chris Murphy, clearly a leader on these issues, somebody who has been a leader since Newtown and even before, sees a path forward. We've seen an openness by even some Republicans to having a debate and a discussion. We'll take that. While that is moving, while there are discussions on that front, and the president will certainly be engaged in those, we are also continuing to review and consider what the options are for executive actions. We hope to have an update on that soon. I don't have an exact day for you at this point in time.
Okay, follow up on that, and then one other matter. On guns, does the president still plan to go to Colorado after the mass shootings there, and if so, when?
I don't have an update on a trip to Colorado. Obviously, that trip would be done in coordination with the leaders in the state, community that was impacted by this terrible tragedy, but I don't have any plans to preview for a trip to Colorado at this point.
And then one more thing. On another lighter matter, it's obviously a presidential tradition to throw out the first pitch on opening day, which I'm happy to report is Thursday. But the Nationals have said that the president declined their invitation to go to this year. Why is that? Why is he not going? Is this about crowds in the park? Is it about sending wrong messaging? Why is he choosing not to be there on Thursday?
Well, first, let me say I know the president's eager to get out to National Stadium. Many beautiful days, many beautiful baseball games ahead this spring. It's not on his schedule this week, but I certainly expect that baseball fans will be hearing from him in the next couple days.
Go ahead. Thanks, Jen. Question about your infrastructure proposal being released tomorrow. Is it going to focus more on shovel-ready projects that could get underway right away, or is it focused more on projects that might take a couple of years to get started but could ultimately have a bigger impact?
It's a great question, and I expect we'll have more to outline on how quickly things can happen once he delivers the speech tomorrow. But let me just say that the speech tomorrow is about making an investment in America. Not just modernizing our roads, our railways, our bridges, but building an infrastructure of the future. So some of it is certainly infrastructure shovel-ready projects. Some of it is how do we expand broadband access. Some of it is ensuring that we are addressing the needs in people's homes and communities. So there are a range of components that he'll talk about when he proposes his ideas tomorrow, when he lays that out in his speech in Pittsburgh.
And how much more should wealthy Americans Americans expect to pay? Will the top marginal rate go back to 39.6% under this proposal?
Well, I expect that tomorrow, again, the speech is really about his vision for creating jobs, good paying union jobs, and really investing in the industries of the future. But he thinks it's the responsible thing to do, to propose a way to pay for that over time. So, and he also believes that there's more that can be done to make the corporate tax code fair. And so I expect that will be the focus of his remarks on taxes tomorrow.
And what about the estate tax? Is that something you're also considering increasing?
Again, I'm not going to get too far ahead of the president's own speech and proposal, and I know we'll be previewing it more in the next 24 hours, but he believes that there's more that can be done to make the corporate tax code fair, to reward work, not wealth, to ensure that we can invest in the future industries that are going to help all people in this country.
And one other topic, 23 countries have signed on to the idea of this WHO treaty that would improve information sharing during future pandemics. Why hasn't the U.S. signed on to that?
Well, we believe it's vital in working with international partners in other countries, and of course strengthening and reforming our international efforts as it relates to addressing pandemics and future pandemics. We do have some concerns primarily about the timing and launching into negotiations for a new treaty right now, and we believe that could divert attention away from substantive issues regarding the response, preparedness for future pandemic threats, and we believe that should be our focus currently. But we're certainly open to and looking for continued collaboration with the global community. Thank you. Go ahead.
Does President Biden believe that the millions of Americans who lost loved ones to COVID-19 deserve a better response than one that they've gotten from the WHO?
In terms of looking into
the origins for COVID-19?
Well, I think he believes that the American people, the global community, the medical experts, the doctors, all of the people who have been working to save lives, the families who have lost loved ones, all deserve greater transparency. They deserve better information. They deserve steps that are taken by the global community to provide that. So there was an extensive statement put out by a number of countries, including the U.S., but let me highlight, we're still reviewing the report, but let me highlight some of the concerns that have come up to date. The report lacks crucial data, information, and access. It represents a partial and incomplete picture. There was a joint statement, as I noted, that was put out. We also welcome a similar statement from the EU and EU members, sending a clear message the global community shares these concerns. There are steps from here that we believe should be taken. There's a second stage in this process that we believe should be led by international and independent experts. They should have unfettered access to data. They should be able to ask questions of people who are on the ground at this point in time, and that's a step the WHO could take.
And that statement says that the U.S. joins these countries in expressing shared concerns. But the statement, quite frankly, is pretty bureaucratic and perhaps does not meet the moment of the seriousness of the crisis here in this country in terms of the death toll. So what is the White House's actual reaction to this report from the WHO? Was it simply inadequate?
Well, the report we're still being reviewed by our team of experts. 17 experts are reviewing it.
But you know the headline of it, and it's not sufficient.
We agree. So. And we have long said, as I just stated, it lacks crucial data, information, it lacks access, it lacks transparency. It certainly, we don't believe that in our review to date that it meets the moment, it meets the impact that this pandemic has had on the global community. And that's why we also have called for additional forward-looking steps. And I will tell you that negotiating between 20 countries or so to get a statement out, sometimes it appears bureaucratic, but well intentioned.
President speak on this?
On the WHO report, I expect we'll let our review conclude and then we'll look for an opportunity for him to speak to it. But I can certainly confirm for you that he shares these concerns. They are coming directly from him and directly from our national security team, who has looked at what the report has presented to date. They're still reviewing and share the concerns issued in that statement that made those concerns clear. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. I just want to piggyback off of that as well. World Health Organization Director General Tedros, one of his primary concerns was that the report may have glossed over, if you will, the possibility that the virus escaped from a lab. Is that a central concern of the White House as well? And then when you talk about cooperation, has China not cooperated enough in the White House's opinion?
Well, they have not been transparent. They have not provided underlying data. That certainly doesn't qualify as cooperation. The analysis performed to date from our experts, their concern is that there isn't additional support for one hypothesis. It doesn't lead us to any closer of an understanding or greater knowledge than we had 6 to 9 months ago about the origin. It also doesn't provide us guidelines or steps, recommended steps on how we should prevent this from happening in the future, and those are imperative.
And so that centers on the hypothesis that would involve the lab.
Again, it doesn't lead to, it doesn't provide us greater understanding of the origin of the virus.
And the second question, just on the next legislative package, has the president started to reach out to moderates, to centrist Republicans as well, and to kind of woo them to get ahead of some of the things that we saw with the last package?
Woo them. I like it. The president will be, of course, directly engaged in this effort to move this package forward. I will say that what he views his role is laying out what a vision is, a broad vision, a bold vision for how we can invest in America, American workers, our communities. We're also, though, very open to hearing ideas and proposals from members of Congress, Democrats or Republicans. We know that 80% or more of people in this country, Democrats and Republicans, support investing in infrastructure. And of course they will. Of course they do. We're 13th in the world as it relates to infrastructure. We're one of the wealthiest countries in the world. That doesn't make a lot of sense to most people across the country. More than 1/3 of bridges in this country need repair. That's 231,000. That's a lot of bridges. 1 in 5 miles, or 886,000 miles of our highways and major roads are in poor conditions. Those aren't issues where Democrats just have concerns. Republicans have concerns. Independents, people who don't see themselves as political. And he believes that we can't afford not to invest in improving our infrastructure. There are questions about people may have different ideas about how to pay for it. We're open to hearing them. So hopefully people will bring forward ideas.
And last question. The skinny budget is due out this week. What programs or agencies should we expect to see a boost in funding?
I know people love the term skinny budget, but is actually just a discretionary guide. So it should be out soon, and we'll wait for it to come out, and then I'm sure we'll have an update from our budget, our OMB team. Go ahead, Kristen.
Thank you, Jen. Could you provide a bit more insight into why the White House has felt the need over the last few days to really clarify the Vice President's role at the border? Was that something that she requested a clarification on?
I actually think that members of the media deserve to have an understanding of what her exact role was, and the president, when he was the vice president, played a very specific role too, where he was running point on the Northern Triangle. He told the story at the press conference last week about how the president called him back from Turkey, I think it was, and he wants the vice president to play a similar role, and engaging with these countries, engaging with their leaders, figuring out how to invest best, how to work in partnership, how to prevent corruption from taking over, to put in place steps that will make the journey less desirable. That is certainly a big assignment, and one the president is confident the vice president will take on
So
and
was
do
the
well.
plan always for her to focus on the Northern Triangle countries, the root causes, as opposed to the border, or did something change?
That was always the plan, and that was the announcement.
Okay. I'd like to find out what the White House thinks about what's happening in San Diego, where some public school teachers are providing in-person instruction at the San Diego Convention Center to migrant children before their own public school students. And these kids, of course, about 130,000 of them have been at home doing online learning for about a year now. So what does the White House think about that?
Well, I know you guys have done a fair amount of reporting on this, so maybe you'll have more details. As I understand it, San Diego public schools are opening in early April.
April 12th to hybrid learning.
Okay. And students will be back in the classroom. And as I understand it, this is related part-time. And certainly, our objective from the White House, opening up 5 days a week, majority of schools across the country. And they're on spring break right now. And this is related to volunteering or being paid. I'm not even sure. You'd have to ask the local school district during spring break for these migrant kids.
Yeah, so the San Diego County Supervisor, Jim Desmond, he says, I think it's great that there's in-person learning for unaccompanied minors from Central America, but I wish every child in San Diego County was allowed the same opportunity for in-person teaching. So I guess the question is, does the White House think that this sends the right message to these 130,000 kids in San Diego and their parents who've been stuck at home for the last year?
Well, I'm just saying that context is important, and these kids are going back to school for hybrid learning. We, of course, want that to be 5 days a week, and we're confident we'll get there early next month. And I believe they're also on spring break right now. So these teachers would be, I'm not sure if it's volunteer or paid, you'd have to ask the local school district, while the kids are on spring break, which I think the context is pretty important.
Okay, and I've got one more question, sorry, about space.
Go ahead.
The Biden administration, they just announced its intention to retain the National Space Council, and this is on top of the White House voicing its support for the Space Force,
Yes.
NASA's Artemis program. I mean, these are 3 programs or policies that President Trump and the Trump administration put in place. So would it be fair to say that space policy is one of the few areas where President Biden actually agrees with his predecessor?
I think that sounds accurate to me. Look, I think the president believes that the National Space Council, as you just conveyed or just asked about, provides an opportunity to generate national space policy strategies, synchronize on America's space activities at a time of unprecedented activity. It's also an opportunity to generate by America's own activities in space. So it certainly is a program, or a council, I should say, he's excited to keep in place, and one I think it's fair to say he agrees with the past administration's maintaining the program. Go ahead in the back.
The White House has been talking about a lot of different types of infrastructure over the last few weeks leading up to the announcement tomorrow. Can you give us a sense of what the general breakdown is going to be on, clean energy and climate type projects versus roads and bridges?
I know we will have an extensive fact sheet that will break down everything for you. It is quite long. It is quite long, and I don't want to get too far ahead of the president. But I will. Let me see if I can give you a little bit more of a breakdown, not in terms of the numbers, but so. Certainly investing in, we've talked about this a little bit, roads, rails, and bridges is part of it. The president believes that we can do that in a way where we can create good paying, clean energy jobs, union jobs. That's part of his vision for investing in industries of the future. He also believes there's more we can do on broadband and ensuring that the far too large percentage of the American people who don't have access, and we invest in that. There's a lot of ways to do that, I will say, though, and he's very open to the ideas coming from Congress on how to do it, and they may have different perspectives on how to do it, the right way to invest and to do it. But he sees, clean energy and clean energy jobs as central to his own vision and his own objectives. You'll certainly hear him talk about that tomorrow, and but the speech is really about, it's about jobs, it's about investing in the industries of the future, and it's about rebuilding parts of our communities that have long been forgotten.
And does the White House have a response to this new Chinese law finalized earlier today that essentially allows them to vet parliamentary candidates in Hong Kong for so-called non-patriots to not be allowed to run for office?
I know we have certainly expressed concerns about the undemocratic steps of the Chinese government in the past. I'll have to check with our national security team. I had not asked them about this specific piece, but we will get back to you shortly after the briefing. Go ahead, Chris.
So Chuck Schumer is urging people to write and email the president, the White House, in hopes that he will cancel up to $50,000 of student loan debt. Why do you think that Schumer has such a fundamentally different reading of what the president can and should do? And if you could answer yes or no, has the president ruled out taking unilateral action on this yet?
No, he has not. I will say that I do have some good student loan news for you, which you didn't even know you were going to tee up for me, but we will be expanding the pause on student loan interest and collections to the more than 1 million borrowers who are in default on a loan that was made by a private lender in the old bank-based loan program known as the Federal Family Education Loan Program. This step particularly protects 800,000 borrowers who are at risk of having their tax refunds seized. That's actually a pretty significant step. steps. The president continues to call on Congress to cancel $10,000 in debt for student loan borrowers. That's something Congress could take an action on, and he'd be happy to sign. We're still taking a closer look at our options on student loans. This includes examining the authorities we have, the existing loan forgiveness programs that are clearly not working as well as they should. This includes borrower defense, total and permanent disability charges. There's a lot of steps we're looking at, and we'll continue to review those and be in touch, of course, with Leader Schumer about our process.
Do you have a sense of the timing on that, how long those reviews might take?
I don't have an update on the timing. There's a legal and a policy review. Go ahead. Oh, Trevor, did you have a question? I didn't mean to escape. Go ahead.
I always have a question.
Of course.
So first, just on the infrastructure questions that we were talking about.
Yeah.
You said yesterday that there would be a dollar-for-dollar accounting of how the measures would be paid for.
Yep, paid for over time. Yep.
Paid for over time.
Mm-hmm.
Is the president willing to sign a bill that does not pay dollar for dollar for all of the proposals that he has?
Well, the president believes it's responsible to propose a way for paying over time for his vision for investing in infrastructure and our economy and American workers. There will be a range of views, including how to pay for it. People will be for or against. Some people may not want to pay for it, and he's open to having those discussions. So, but the focus of his speech, of his proposal, is on investing in America. We're talking about tax reform proposals that would help pay for it over time, but the reason he is putting those forward is because he thinks it's responsible to put forward a plan to pay for it as a means of discussing that. But it's really about investing in workers.
But he is open to deficit financing in a final package. Is that?
Again, I think we haven't even proposed the speech yet. There will be a range of views on Capitol Hill, as we all certainly know. He's proposing a way to pay for his proposals over time. We'll look forward to hearing from members of Congress on how they want to approach it, given there's such strong support for infrastructure investment across the country.
Okay, and just on a quick one on foreign policy. Iran has come out and basically already rejected a proposal that you haven't even put on the table yet about relaxing some of the sanctions against them to get them to come to the table. They say all of the sanctions need to be relaxed before they'll consider any changes on enrichment. Is there any point to putting a proposal on the table if it's already going to be a non-starter?
Well, we remain committed to pursuing a diplomatic process to determine a way forward. Sometimes that takes some time, and we certainly have found that in the past as it relates to negotiations with Iran. We remain ready to re-engage in meaningful diplomacy to achieve a mutual return to compliance with the JCPOA commitments. And that offer to discuss and engage is on the table. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. One quick follow-up on space and then two others.
Sure.
So, Vice President Pence had a pretty public-facing role with National Space Council. He was kind of involved in the policy making. I know it's a new thing here, but Vice President Harris had a similar involvement with the Space Council on her end.
It's a great question. I know it's the Space Council technically falls under the Vice President's team and office. I'd have to talk to her team about her public-facing role, and I'm happy to do that.
Gotcha. One on ambassadors. So there is yet to be an appointment for the U.S. ambassador to China. There's been some reporting that there's rumors about kind of jockeying of who that person might be. Any updates on the appointment timeline, even a short list for that posting?
I know I've seen a lot of names reported out there, some of which would be great choices, but I don't have an update on the timeline for announcing the nomination of ambassadors.
For the summertime, anything broad?
Certainly hope so, but I don't have an update on when the president will make any decisions.
One quick one on the Supreme Court. So about a year ago, I would say, President Biden and candidate Biden committed to putting a black woman on the Supreme Court. Of course, today's appointments and news kind of generate some buzz on who those folks might be. Is there any update, anything you could advance for us on Vice President Biden's efforts to put a black person on the Supreme Court, any kind of shortlist situation to that end?
It would require there being an opening on the Supreme Court, of course. There is not an opening on the Supreme Court. Look, I think there is an incredible group of nominees. The president announced today, as someone who served for 17 years on the Senate Judiciary Committee as chairman and ranking member. He has a long history on judicial appointments. This is a priority for him, but our focus is on getting the Senate to confirm these group of nominees and to continue to build a pipeline of additional highly qualified nominees who are going to reflect the values the president has outlined.